two quick stories, and then we'll move on. But the first is in the Old Testament. Was this guy named Moses. And this is an interesting story to me. Last year, I spent the whole year studying this relationship between this guy named Moses, and then he had an understudy that ended up taking over for him named Joshua. And I took the whole year last year and studied these two because I thought it was an interesting dynamic. And they come to this place where there's a war. There's a battle going on. It's happening kind of in the valley. And Moses goes up on top of the hill. And Moses is now watching over as the Israelites are fighting this other army. And as they're fighting, Moses is praying over them. And he's got his hands raised. And as he's praying over them, he's got his hands raised. They're winning the battle. They're just slaughtering the other team. Well, if you've ever held your arms for very long of time, after a little while, they begin to get tired. And they begin to fall. And if you've ever done it for real long, it's almost like they become dead weight. And you can't even get them up. And Moses notices that when his arms begin to fall, when he stops praising God and his arms begin to fall, the army starts losing the battle. And I mean, it's like, people are starting to die. You can tell that the tide is turning. So Moses is obviously then trying to get his arms back up, and he can't. Well, Moses has two helpers, Aaron and Hur, H-U-R, and they see this. They understand, okay, when Moses' arms are up, we win. When they're down, we're losing. When they're up, we win. When they're down, we're losing. So they say, we've got to help him hold his arms up. And so they come underneath him, and they take his arms, and they begin to hold him up. They actually put a rock underneath him so he can sit on it, and they begin to hold his arms up so that he can begin to pray, and as he prays, they see the battle change. Did you know it's so important that we as leaders have people that come beside us to hold our arms up? Because it gets tiring. And listen, this isn't woe is me. It's for anybody that's a leader. It gets tiring. It gets hard. And you see the battles happening, and sometimes it's like, I don't always want to pray. Can I just be honest with you? I know you think I'm a pastor, and I spend like 37 hours a day with like incense in a prayer room, like, like waving it. But I don't. I do pray. I have a prayer life. But there's sometimes that it's like, today it doesn't feel like I want to do it. But to know that there's people that come alongside, because here's the problem. When I know that my prayer life begins to lower, when I know that my walk with God begins to lower and my arms begin to lower, you know what I begin to see? The battle being lost. And I see people that are in my life that start fighting these battles harder, and I realize that they're losing, and as I begin to see that their lives are getting harder, and then I say, okay, I've got to get my arms back up. And in that moment, to be able to have people that come beside and go, look, I'm not the best fighter, I'm not the best singer, the best prayer, but I can hold your arms. And have you ever tried to hold somebody's arms up? Not only are you holding your arms up, but now I don't know how big of a guy Moses was, but if he had pipe and guns like I do, you're holding like 37 pounds up. So, that's not like an easy job in and of itself, right? You're holding the arms up. But not only did you have that, you have Joshua who's in the battlefield. And I think this is an interesting dynamic because you have Joshua who's fighting a battle, waging this war, and his leader is standing up on the top praying. You just want to know an honest thought I had? How did Joshua not get bitter? Like, great, you put me down here to fight while you stand up there and pray. Okay, Moses, you stay up out of harm's way on the mountain and pray. I'll take the boys down and fight and risk my life while you're up there praying. Man, we can get in that attitude sometimes in the church, can't we? Well, you don't know what they're just out there praying while we're in here setting up the chairs and taking care of the things and doing this and blah, 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 and they're the ones over there doing, and they're just, you don't realize that if that joker drops his arms, your life is gone. You don't realize that those three guys are determining whether or not there's victory down here, but Joshua never does that. What does Joshua do? Joshua goes in guns a-blazing. All right, Moses, you tell me what to do and I'll go. You know what's interesting is that Moses' arms, the two guys that are holding his arms, aren't the ones that take over for Moses. It's the one fighting the battle. Why? Because God was trying to teach him, if you'll honor them, if you'll be a helper for them, someday I'll have an army for you. Then not only did we have Joshua who is out there leading the charge, then we have to have men fighting. And not only do you have to have men fighting, you have to have people that are healing up the wounded, right? Have you ever, arrows aren't exactly sanitary. Swords aren't exactly sanitary. You have to have people begin, and then you have to have people feeding those people that are in the army. So they can go back and eat. The war back then was they would fight, and then when it got dark, they would leave, rest up, eat up, morning, here we go again. You had to have every bit of person. It wasn't just about Moses. It was all the way down to the potato peeler. It was just as important that guy was getting dinner ready for the troops as it was that the guy was praying, because if the guy's praying and they have no energy, it would take a supernatural for that to happen. It's important that we realize that every one of us is needed. We can't do this thing alone.